Hi, welcome back to my series, Best Movie Summer Ever. I am looking back at the summer movie seasons of years past to determine which was the biggest. Not necessarily the best, but the biggest, the highest grossing, the most influential. And I am on to 1996. Wow, I'm practically drooling. I'm so excited. 1996 was a big year. Not in terms only of box office, but also just marketing style. As you probably remember, in 1989, we had the first Tim Burton Batman movie, which had a huge push as far as the Bat logo being put on everything, and then sort of Jurassic Park followed it up with putting the Jurassic Park logo on everything, in addition to just advertising the movie the normal way. And then came Independence Day. 1996 had Independence Day spaceships and the ID4 shorthand for the title everywhere. Now I remember when the movie Terminator 2 was being advertised, it was advertised also as T2, not simply Terminator 2 Judgment Day. And ID4 took that a step farther by inventing a whole new title. There is no Independence Day 4. The name of the movie is not Independence Day numeral 4, it's just Independence Day. But they took the image of the giant spaceship hanging over a city and the three-letter code ID4 and said, yeah, that's our movie, and it's going to be everywhere, and it's coming, watch out. Yes, so there we have it. Independence Day is not my favorite movie, not one of my favorite summer movies, but it was big business, and it was just the latest. I mean, when it came out in the first weekend of July, the latest in a line of movies that just came along and just smashed everything to bits. At the beginning of the summer, you had Twister, Jan de Bont's follow-up to Speed. You had Bill Paxton and Helen Hunt as the Storm Chaser guys and their team, but of course, the tornadoes were the real stars of that movie. The mayhem, the special effects, the visual effects. And you had, at the end of May Memorial Day weekend, you had the first Mission Impossible movie. Tom Cruise, his own franchise, basically, the first time that he'd ever attempted to really launch a franchise. And it worked out great because the Mission Impossible movies are still coming out. Got another one due out at the end of this July. And then there was The Rock. The Rock came out in June, and that was massive business. Jerry Bruckheimer and his whole producing thing was really picking up steam. He'd done Bad Boys the year before, and Crimson Tide, and this summer he was, in the summer of '96, it was The Rock. And The Rock was huge business. It was well liked by most of the people I saw it. Certain present company excluded. I hate that movie, but I do recognize that it was a big success, and a lot of people really liked it. It's probably Michael Bay's most well-liked movie. The Transformers movies have made more money, but are they as well-liked as The Rock? I don't think so. So, big business. 96, that was basically like 4 huge movies that just stomped all over everything. And there were some other successes too. The Nutty Professor being the most notable one. Eddie Murphy playing multiple characters for the first time, and he would go on to do that in other movies, not just Nutty Professor movies, but doing the dual role of Buddy Love and the Professor Sherman, I think his name is. I really don't remember. I tried watching that movie one time. It was just a little bit too broad and slapsticky for me, so I kind of tuned out. But big success, they did a sequel, and Eddie Murphy made more movies kind of in the same vein. So yeah, big business. Another noteworthy event that summer, Jim Carrey became the first actor to release a movie in which he was paid $20 million for making one movie. That was The Cable Guy. Of course, he had huge success in '94. He did 3 big movies, hit movies come out in '94, and suddenly he was a major movie star just immediately. Then he was in the next Batman movie the following summer as the Riddler, and he was probably one of the best things about that movie. And then The Cable Guy came out, and they figured, hey, this guy's so amazing, he's worth $20 million, and The Cable Guy was not quite as well liked as those other movies. In fact, some people hated it. Some people recognized that it was something different and a little dark, took some risks. I'm not sure how big of a hit it was exactly. Then there are a couple of movies that were, more disappointing than that. You had Dragonheart. Dragonheart was a movie that was shot like 2 years earlier and finally came out in '96 because of all the effects work. And the effects work involved, the first time really, and there were CGI characters in movies before, but the first real CGI character in which, it had a lot of dialogue and it had a really sort of expressive face and mouth. And they would use the camera to record the mouth movements of the actor so they could use that in animating the character. This was Sean Connery as the dragon. Sean Connery did the voice of the dragon, but he also had, his mouth scanned as he spoke the lines, and so they could map those movements onto the character. It was, I think, the first time that I'd seen that done, and it looked great. It was really great. I remember watching clips of it on TV before the movie came out and just rewinding it and watching it over and over again. Wow, look at that mouth. It's so expressive. It's really amazing. But it took a long time. It took, them 2 years after they'd shot the movie to actually get all the effects done so they could release the movie. Now it doesn't take as long. It takes a lot of computer power, as always, because you want it to look really good and, be photoreal. Thanos takes a long time to animate. But yeah. Now, I like that movie. That movie's decent, but it wasn't a huge hit, unfortunately. If it had been a bigger phenomenon, that would have been nice. But yeah, it was just kind of did okay. Not great business. Okay. Continuing on, the next day, the big box office disaster of the summer of 1996 was The Island of Dr. Moreau. This was a movie that was developed and was supposed to be directed by Richard Stanley, who directed a science fiction movie with Dylan McDermott a few years earlier called Hardware. Richard Stanley started production, and then he got fired after a little while and replaced with John Frankenheimer. And Richard Stanley says that the reason for this is because one of his actors, Val Kilmer, wouldn't say the lines that were written in the script. He was making up his own lines, and instead of firing Kilmer, the studio fired the director. I'm sure the studio has something else to say about why that happened, and probably Val Kilmer has something else to say about that as well. I really don't know. I wasn't there. But Richard Stanley actually had some of the makeup department put him in a costume and mask so that he could sneak back onto the set unrecognized and observe what was happening. And apparently there was a lot of crazy stuff happening. Kilmer was originally, they wanted him to play the lead character, but he decided to play a more colorful supporting character instead. So the script was rewritten and they cast Rob Morrow, but then Rob Morrow decided he didn't want to do it, so they cast David Thewlis instead. And meanwhile, Marlon Brando was cast as the scientist that is genetically merging people with animal species and creating all kinds of havoc. And Marlon Brando being Marlon Brando, he would make up a lot of his own lines and not really, follow along with the script and just kind of do what he liked. And because he's Marlon Brando, no one could say no to him. Yeah, and it turned out to be quite the disaster. The bad press apparently affected the box office negatively in much the same way that it seemed to affect Solo very recently. Not sure exactly, but I saw the movie. It's not good. And part of that, might be due to the fact that the script was always being changed and no one would follow it and things like that. So, yeah, kind of a disaster there. Big bomb. Big notorious bomb. So my next video is going to be on the summer of 1999, but let me quickly recap what happened in the summers of 97 and 98. In 97, the three top grossing movies of that summer were, of course, The Lost World, Jurassic Park, Men in Black, and Air Force One. There was also Austin Powers, which came out right around the beginning of summer. I remember it coming out in April, but apparently it's like a May release. Anyway, there was also Volcano. I know Volcano wasn't technically a summer movie because it came out in April. The Full Monty came out in summer, here in the States anyway, or maybe it came out in England, and I don't know, I'm a little fuzzy on that. I think probably it came out in the fall, never mind. Anyway, there were two huge disasters that summer. The Fifth Element also came out that year. People, I don't know, have some sort of affection for that movie. I'm not really sure why. I'm not crazy about it. But Speed 2 Cruise Control, which was terribly boring and didn't make a lot of money and was way expensive. And then, of course, the granddaddy of all terrible comic book movies, Batman and Robin. Even more notorious than Superman 4: The Quest for Peace. Batman and Robin was quite the disaster. They threw tons of money at it. They had Arnold Schwarzenegger playing one of the villains. They had Uma Thurman vamping it up as Poison Ivy. But Val Kilmer, of course, who played Batman, did not get along with Schumacher, so they recast him with George Clooney, and George Clooney just didn't look like he wanted to be there at all. The movie is just like, you know, so, just, yeah, it's an unpleasant experience. I went to see it in the theater. It's unpleasant. I would not recommend it to anybody. So that was 97. 98, the three top grossing movies worldwide that year were Michael Bay directed Armageddon, produced again by Jerry Bruckheimer. Saving Private Ryan, the Best Picture nominee, directed by Spielberg and starring Tom Hanks and Matt Damon, a whole bunch of other cool people. And There's Something About Mary, one of my favorite movies of the year. I saw this movie and I'm like, that movie is a winner. It's going to win the MTV Award, and it did. Really, really fun movie, very funny, crazy. That's directed by the Farrelly brothers and starred Ben Stiller and Cameron Diaz and Matt Damon. In addition to that, we also had Deep Impact, which was kind of a surprise hit. No real big stars in that, unless you consider Morgan Freeman an A-lister. A lot of people, I'm sure, do. But he played the president, and there's a meteor heading to Earth, and of course, this was the summer where you had two movies coming out pretty much the same time, in which there was some giant object flying through space, about to collide with Earth and wipe out everyone. But they were both hits. Unlike usual, you have one movie, like Dante's Peak, for example, earlier in the year, which is about a volcano, that becomes a hit. And then the movie that comes out after that ends up doing not so well. Also, that happened with Tombstone and Wyatt Earp. But in this case, both the movies were big successes. So there's that. Also, there was The Truman Show, which is a very well-regarded movie with Jim Carrey playing a guy he doesn't know that he's being broadcast on TV his entire life, 24 hours a day. Blade, Wesley Snipes as Blade, one of the first big Marvel comic book movies after they couldn't really get Fantastic Four or Captain America off the ground initially. Also, some pretty big disappointments. 6 Days, 7 Nights was a Harrison Ford comedy, which they threw a lot more action into it than maybe was necessary. This all had to do with his co-star Anne Heche and her personal relationship and how much press that was getting because she was dating Ellen DeGeneres at the time. And there was Avengers, the Avengers, not the comic book movie Avengers, but the adaptation of the British TV show. Ralph Fiennes and Uma Thurman played the characters, and it was kind of a disaster. Sean Connery was the villain in that. And Godzilla, the Independence Day guys, the director and producer decided to make their own Godzilla movie, and everyone thought that was a great idea. And the movie turned out to be not so good, and it was a big disappointment. So that was 1998. And the next video, as I said, is going to be 1999, which was, you know, pretty big. There was returning a big franchise that was about to return to cinemas after many years of being away. So everyone was super jacked about that. And there was plenty of other big hits as well, including one movie that kind of came out of nowhere and just blew everyone away. Yeah, and got Oscar nominations on all that stuff. So I'll get into that in the next video, which will be next week. Thanks very much for watching. Appreciate it very much. Hope you've enjoyed this. And if you'd like to check out my Facebook page, of course, the link to that is in the description below, along with a playlist where you can see all the videos in this series that I've been doing. Thank you very much for watching. I'll see you again soon. Take it easy.